All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, we've got a bang-up show for you today. Do you prefer cockroaches or cows for dinner? I think that's going to be a serious question in the future. So we have a guest that I think you're going to love hearing from today. We've got Jason Nelson with us from Prepper All Naturals, All Naturals. You can find them at wholecows.com. I'm going to tell you why, or you'll learn why pretty quickly, why he is a very important guest and a timely guest to have on today. We couldn't have planned this. We already had Jason scheduled, and then we get this column that pops up in the Wall Street Journal by Kimberly Strassel called the Them versus Us election. So we're going to talk about this because Jason has a business that I think aligns with this topic perfectly. And we're going to get right into this. So Jason Nelson, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show.
Hey, Carl, thank you so much for having me on. Sorry, our pre-conversation is stuck in my head now and I'm ready to go.
All right, man. So am I. I don't think I could have picked a better guest to have today, given the news and what we're experiencing right now. It's absolutely insane. So let's do this first. Let's give a little bit of your history, Jason, because I feel like this is very important. I mean, you're a very unique type of figure. So just give people your history. You're a disabled U.S. Army and Marine veteran, a former congressional candidate in the 17th Congressional District of Texas. Tell us about that, if you would, real quickly.
I joined the Marine Corps at the age of 18. I spent 8 years there, and after college, I'd learned to read, so the Marine Corps wouldn't take me back. So I went into the Army. I went into Army Special Operations and under Civil Affairs and Psychological Operations. Basically, my job was to go into places those people don't want to go to and use zero resources to make miracles happen, or as we like to say, create simple solutions for complex problems. And I just did that around the world, whether it be humanitarian missions or in Afghanistan or so forth and so on. And I retired 2 years ago, 100% combat disabled, and just looking forward to the next chapter of my life. And I wanted to solve problems and continue to engage in my community. And after my congressional run, I knew there was a need for agrarian support of the agrarian sector, I should say, here in my district, as well as a need for mid-level tech jobs, that kind of thing. And we looked to solve some problems, and there's a large problem in that people don't want us to have healthy food available to us, whether it be day to day or in an emergency. It doesn't really matter. But in the quality of food and other such things that were out there, I said, I think there's an opportunity here to shift the paradigm on freeze-dried beef, which is something that most people think of beef. Or taco-flavored beef porridge or crumbles or something. I don't know where crumbles are in a cow, but we just wanted to shift the paradigm on that and create a solution, a simple and elegant solution for what really is a complex problem. Where do you get your animal proteins when you're in an emergency, when there is no access to the market, or when they tell you that it's time to start eating cockroaches instead?
Guys, make sure you check out the website, wholecows.com, wholecows.com. Just real quick, Jason, let me circle back here. You were involved in psychological operations for the military. Could you give me an example of that? What would that look like?
Oh, gosh. So a PSYOP, again, so it's a split. It's civil affairs and psychological operations. But the psychological operations aspect of it is, the best example I can come up with for people is television. Television is just one great PSYOP where they guide you exactly where they want to. They preempt you. They set your expectations, your mode of thinking, and then they feed you information that shores up that in the way they want you to think. And eventually they alter your perceptions and alter your future actions. It's through manipulation. And people can say, well, there's good intent in some of it or bad intent or whatever. But in the end, psychological operations is all about winning over the minds through manipulation.
Man, and I think we see that a lot today on social media, censorship that we see with big tech, or if you watch 90 Day Fiance or anything like that with your spouse. So that
must buy something. Yes, I know, it's what it feels like, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And you have another story. I asked you about this. The last time I interviewed you, it was for Salem News Channel Tonight, and we had a off-air discussion that went on air. You were recently involved in a self-defense case in Texas. Do you mind sharing that with the audience as well? I thought that was extremely fascinating because it was like it came out of nowhere, and I was like, "What? Are you kidding?" But it's fascinating, and I think it makes the case for obviously for self-defense, for the Second Amendment, and why people should be prepared, because you never know when a crazy situation you may encounter a crazy situation, life and death situation.
Yeah, so we had talked about it, I remember. So last July, my wife and I took a date night. And, when you've been married for 10 years, you know what a date night is? It's you take your wife out to a nice hotel, you get her a nice dinner, and then you let her take a bubble bath and go to sleep without children crawling all over her. And that's what we went and did at this, it's called the Hotel Indigo here in Waco. It's a nice boutique hotel. And we went and had dinner and stayed overnight, and at 3 a.m, we were wakened by screaming, women screaming. Thought it was children, but I thought it was a medical or a fire emergency. But it turned out that it was a man trying essentially to kill these 3 women who. Again, later on, we found out there's so many details about this later on, but in the time, it was me reacting to screams and these women who said this man was trying to kill them, and I had to try to de-escalate this situation, which unfortunately ended in a fatal shooting after the man, picked me up and slammed me into a wall and tried to take my firearm. But in the end, we find out that these women were being sexually trafficked, and it's tied to this whole porous border situation that we have. So it was an insane. You never think that these are the things you're going to do when you come back from war, and that your wife is going to have to see it. That people are, we went out for, my goodness, to get a good night's sleep, right? And unfortunately, found myself having to exercise both my Second Amendment rights to defend myself, but also to defend others. And then on top of that, to be, thrown under the magnifying glass that is the law, because I, had to go through a whole grand jury investigation and all that when I did everything that was morally and legally right. But it was a insane situation. You never think you're going to find, you look back at your history in your life and you never think that you're going to say, oh my gosh, there was that night that I had to shoot this monster, this 350-pound drugged up or drunken monster who's, attacking women. And yet there I was.
And obviously that's a testament to our open border crisis, which is completely intentional. We got the news this week.
No question.
I'm just, I don't even know what word to use, Jason, but the fact that we had 2 justices that are supposedly originalists side with the lefties on the Supreme Court to tell Texas, hey, those razor wire barriers that you're putting up across the southern border to make sure this invasion just at least declines to a certain level or so on. No, you can't have those. This is absolutely insane. What we're living through. Let me get your take on that real quick, because that was a shocker. I was like, wait a minute, is Ruth Bader Ginsburg supported DACA? Amy Coney Barrett apparently supports an invasion. Where the
So I'm going to have a different take on this that may not be that popular. So I agree 100% with you. There is no question down here in Texas that I believe the Texas government should be able to replace whatever the federal government's not doing or supplant or, that we're being invaded. There is just no other word for it, okay? When you let in millions and millions of people in just a 2-year period, I can't even think of another country that could handle this. So agree 100%. That said, the ruling is that the federal government was within their bounds and their authority to do that, and Texas had overstepped theirs. The ruling wasn't that the federal government was doing their job. It wasn't that they agreed that, hey, the federal government's just doing perfect. They're just saying, hey, there's a way you're supposed to exercise this, and they are doing it right now by impeaching Mayorkas. But I 100% agree with you, and I hate that they sided with this, but I can understand the ruling and why it was constitutionally correct. It was incorrect in that they, you want the Supreme Court to sit here and step in as the third independent branch and say, hey, fix this. But in reality, it's Congress, the legislature, that's supposed to fix this, and they're just not doing it because they're lazy and they don't know how to.
Now, and that's fair, because honestly, that was Scalia's opinion. He was like, "Listen, if you want to fix, you want to fix the border, stop funding it." I forget. I think he said. I think Thomas Massey posted that. So fair. That is absolutely fair.
That makes me feel smart because I did not read the dissenting or the original's opinion on it. So there you go.
No, yeah, it is fair, but I would say this. I would wish that Texas would, and I know this sets horrible precedent. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but I wish they would defy the Supreme Court. I don't know.
I do as well.
I don't know how you stop this problem. I mean, we cannot continue like this. Anyway, guys, we only have 10 seconds left in this block. We're going to return with my guest, Jason Nelson of WholeCows.com. Take the time to check out his website. Don't eat cockroaches, eat cows. We'll be back. Welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. Again, I'm joined by my guest, Jason Nelson. WholeCows.com is his website. Guys, we're having this conversation, us versus them. We're going to get into that. There was a Wall Street Journal piece that appeared earlier this week, written by Kimberly Strassel. And honestly, I don't think much has changed since the COVID lockdowns began. The elite are living their lives. They don't see much of anything wrong with the way the economy is, or they're not worried about the same issues that the average American is worried about. And so we're going to get into that discussion. And that's exactly why I think Jason Nelson is the perfect guest to have on today. But before we go on, I do want to talk to you about MyPillow.com and Mike Lindell. He wants to thank you, and I want to thank all of my listeners for all of your continued support. And to thank you, they're having an overstock clearance sale right now for the best prices ever. All you have to do is use the promo code Carl, that is my name, CARL, and you get free shipping on your entire order. Get 50% off the MyPillow 2.0 and the brand new flannel sheets that just arrived and won't last long. Get 6-pack towel sets for only $29.98, and I love their towels. I will not use another towel. God is my witness. And take advantage of the free shipping on larger items like mattresses and mattress toppers. 100% made in the USA, on sale for as low as $99.99. Everything is on sale, from the brand new kitchen towels that have the same technology as the bath towels that actually absorb, dog beds, blankets, couch pillows, and so much more. To get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com. Again, use the promo code Carl. Just click on the radio podcast square at the top of the page, or give them a call at 800-858-0263. That's 800-858-0263, and get free shipping on your entire order while supplies last. Make sure you tell them that Carl sent you, CARL, not the communist, KARL. I spell it correctly. Anyway, back with my guest, Jason Nelson of WholeCows.com. Again, check out his website if you want to eat real cows and good meat. All right. But I thought he was the perfect guest to bring on today, in lieu of all of the things that have transpired throughout this week. Jason, just let me get your take real quick, too, on obviously we're in a primary cycle, presidential primary cycle. Iowa, DeSantis has bowed out of the race. Nikki Haley, in my opinion, no longer has a clear path. However, I'm not going to tell any American to stop voting for their candidate. This is a free country. But let me get your take just real quick on how you see perhaps this primary and the election going.
Well, right now, I think that President Trump is the clear front runner. Not only that, but I think he's clearly set to win. So the question is, what hurdles are they going to put in his path right now? Legally, they can continue to throw whatever they want at him, but the closer we get to the election, the more you have a massive opportunity for civil unrest. So I don't think they're going to interfere in the election. They can't do it through the courts. I know that a lot of people believe they will, but I believe at a certain point it'll be put on hold. I think Nikki Haley is a neocon in a liberal skin suit. And so I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't try to pull her as an independent ticket, or to put her on Biden's ticket, or to replace Biden. She's that much of a Democrat. So I see Trump winning in the end, as long as we're allowed to have a free and fair election.
This is okay. So for the first time, and I'm with you on Nikki Haley. I mean, from the way she ran South Carolina, identity politics, so on, et cetera. I'm just like, I really don't understand all of the pizzazz for Nikki Haley, except from those that are independents, or moderates, if you will, or even Democrats, as so many crossed over for her, even in Iowa, and then you see in New Hampshire. I mean, obviously it's an open primary, so that's why she has performed as far as well as she has. I'm shocked. For the first time the other night, I heard Nikki Haley, someone say, well, Nikki Haley would do good as a third-party candidate, a surrogate of hers. And I'm like, what? I mean, this is just insane. But that just gives you all the more reason not to vote for her, in my opinion. Anyway, all right, Jason, let's get back to this. Again, I'm speaking to Jason Nelson of WholeCows.com. Again, WholeCows.com. Guys, I'm a bit of a prepper. I haven't ordered yet, Jason, but I'm going to make sure that I order. Because I am a bit of a prepper. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I'm crazy, but let's face it. When we go through this column and some of the things that Scott Rasmussen surveyed amongst the elites, you may want to go to WholeCows.com. All right, so let's just put it that way. And let's go ahead and get into this here, Jason. Okay, so Scott Rasmussen, he no longer owns Rasmussen, the polling company. He sold that quite some time ago. But now it says here that Scott Rasmussen's RMG research conducted for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity this survey, and he followed these consistent outlier data points from a subset of Americans. Basically, he later defined those Americans as those with a postgraduate degree, earning more than $150,000 a year, and living in a high-density area. Rasmussen, in the fall, conducted 2 surveys of these quote-unquote elites and compared their views to everyone else. Now, here's what I want to get into, because there's a lot of stuff to cover here. But the first thing that he mentions, among the elites, 74% say their finances are getting better, compared with 20% of the rest of voters. He says, in parentheses, the share is 88% among elites who are Ivy League graduates. So all of this pain that the average American is feeling here, Jason, the elites aren't feeling that same level of pain. And so we may look at the economy and say, oh my Lord, things were so much better under Trump. Not necessarily for the elites.
Well, I mean, first of all, you're talking about a group of people who've essentially built their own subset in the economy, right? So they turned around and created the idea of DEI and other such things, whether it be climate change activism and other types of jobs and fields that they just artificially created. So they created this emergency and then said, I have the solution. And that's the group of people you're talking about. These are the people who live. I mean, there's not manufacturing in major urban areas. There's no major distribution hubs that people aren't commuting from. You're talking about people who sit in think tanks in Alexandria, Virginia, or Washington D.C. or New York City, and they essentially try to set these policies for everyone else. And I do love the word elite that's being used, because I don't even think these people could fix their own toilet if they needed to. And I mean, really, and so when you look at what they separate and stratify themselves by is the income. We have inflation right now, a hyperinflation, and so you have people who in rent-controlled areas are going, oh, well, I'm doing better right now. No, you're just doing better at this moment, maybe. In your own mind. Again, you've built your own sub-economy, as well as the fact that you have hyperinflation. But for those of us who own homes, those of us who have to actually buy gas, those of us who actually have to go to a grocery store and buy groceries, we all see the 40 to 50% increase in costs that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, we're not blind to it. And so they may live in this little fantasy land of theirs, but it's not the real world anymore for anyone else.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because it was a couple of weeks ago, whatever the movie was, Netflix drama, or I forget which platform it was on, but that Obama directed film that did so well. And basically a prepper film to some degree. And I'm sitting there thinking, the preppers are going to be in, or billionaire preppers or elite preppers that are disconnected from the average American, from real society. They're going to be in serious trouble. I don't care if they have $1 million or $10 million bunker, if they don't know how to do anything, and they have to survive
by their security first, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm just saying, you're sitting there going, "Wait, I'm going to spend the rest of the Armageddon protecting you." No, that's okay. I don't. I mean,
that's such a great point. I don't want to go past it. It's such a great point, because if people really get hungry, have you ever seen that movie? What was it called? Alive, where those people, literally based on a true story, where these people crashed on top of some mountaintop somewhere.
Oh, yes.
And they were lost for months, and eventually they had to resort to eating corpses to survive.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
man,
it's not a far-fetched, but like you said, these people, you're talking about, can you fix your own, water filtration system? Because if you don't know how to, you got about, however long the warranty doesn't last that when you put it in. I mean, again, the idea of them building these massive bunkers and thinking they're still going to live out in a better life than the rest of people irks me to no end degree. The idea is that in the event of an emergency, we should build up people. We should have them able to self-sustain and able to weather a crisis and then be able to come back together as a community, not take yourself and isolate yourself away from everyone and not give anyone any solutions prior to or during. I mean, if you're supposedly an elite, why aren't you helping to solve the problem as opposed to just adding to it and contributing to, quite frankly, the downfall of our entire society at this point?
Yeah, it's really demonic and evil. In my opinion, no doubt about it. And for those of you that are listening today, I would encourage you, learn a skill, because these people are dead set on making you eat cockroaches. As God is my witness, I really believe that. Listen, guys, we have to take a break, but when we return, I'm going to continue with Jason Nelson. He's the CEO and founder of WholeCows.com. Go ahead and check out that website now. We'll be back with more with Jason on the other side. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. And again, I am joined by my guest, Jason Nelson. He is the CEO, founder of WholeCows.com. And by the way, if you go to WholeCows.com, you can use the promo code STORM to get 15 to 20% off of your purchase. And it'll come with free shipping. So use the promo code STORM when you go to WholeCows.com if you want to check out the product. Okay, so Jason and I have been going through this article that was written earlier in the week by Kimberly Strassel of the Wall Street Journal. And basically, guys, we've known this. It's us versus them. I think the left, if you will, they've moved beyond, rich versus poor. They've added all types of, whether it's CRT, DEI, all types of stuff. But essentially, even amongst, and I think this is an issue, even amongst political parties, where I think there's kind of a separation, if you will, between the elites and the average American. I mean, the Mitch McConnells of the world that sitting, and the Joe Bidens that sit in, Congress forever, make millions and millions of dollars sitting in Congress, something that they could not do otherwise, is absolutely astonishing. And they exist in this bubble where they're just so out of touch with the average American. I want to move point by point with you, if I could, Jason, and just hit these real quick here. Again, I'm going back to Kimberly Strassel's article in the Wall Street Journal, the them versus us election. And I really don't believe anything has changed since the COVID lockdowns. We saw a shift really when, if you may recall, during the COVID lockdowns, when they first started, the sales in yachts went up. Like, everybody else is struggling, but the wealthiest are the wealthy. And I have no problem with people obtaining wealth. I want to be wealthy myself. So I have no problem with that. But it was an indicator of how much the COVID lockdowns, and again, I'm not saying the pandemic, but what these tyrannical little wannabe dictators try to impose on the rest of Americans. While we were struggling, you had the wealthiest of the wealthy that were playing by their own rules. And this is kind of becoming the norm amongst the elites. So the second point that Kimberly Strassel makes is the elite give President Biden an 84% approval rating compared with 40% from non-elites. Jason, here's why I'm concerned about this. Everyone believes that the election in November will be a runaway if it's Trump versus Biden. I don't necessarily believe that, and I'm curious to get your take because you've dealt with civil affairs and psychological operations, and I'm looking at the elite of the elite, which I would assume would be the influencers, if you will, of the left that might say, "Hey, nothing to see here, everything's good," and people might be dumb enough to believe it, despite their eyes seeing higher gas prices and grocery prices. Your take?
You know, when they're able to turn around and give your money, your tax dollars, to support essentially these left-wing causes and left-wing activists and left-wing think tanks and left-wing NGOs and other such things which provide a lot of these quote-unquote elite jobs, it's very easy for them to take for granted and to push the rest of Americans, their thoughts and their positions, their point in life where they are, where they're dealing with, for example, inflation and hyperinflation and other such issues. It's very easy for them to set all of that aside because they live in a little bubble, a fantasy bubble. So I agree with you that you should never take for granted an election. But I really, after looking at this, I mean, again, how they defined an elite, I don't think these people have as much influence as they like to believe they do. I think that the MSM has changed drastically. I think that you no longer have any one media source that everybody listens to, even though you have a corporate unimedia and a uniparty in Washington. I think that there are a lot of people who have found, I mean, hosts like yourself. They hear alternative takes on the news or fresh takes at a different perspective, and all of a sudden they start to say, "Hey, wait a minute. Maybe these things I've been fed just aren't true." And you know how you win a psychological operation sort of warfare when you're going back and forth is that you have to be able to point out clearly the lies that are in the foundations of your enemies' truth, if you will, and or perception or what they're presenting. And you have to ensure that all the bricks that you have in your foundation are absolute truths and that no one's able to slip a lie in there and weaken your foundation. And when you have a strong foundational argument, and you can point out the flaws in theirs, you win without having to actually do anything other than just prove the argument is true. And I think a lot of people see things, whether it be the trans agenda that's happening inside the United States right now, or whether it be, again, inflation that you can see with your eyes. People aren't fooled by this. And the more that they see that lie, that brick that's fallen apart, the more they see the whole infrastructure over there is crumbling, that truth, that facade that's been created. And now they look over to your side and they start to say, well, what's over here? What are your truth bricks? And if they are strong and foundational, maybe this is the actual thing that's happening in the world. I just think we've been slowly winning this culture war, if you will, over the last couple of years through objective truth.
Yeah, that's good. And that's why I say this is your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. And, you know, Jason, I was never good enough to make it to the NBA, but I am considering a run at the WNBA, given the new rules that seem to be going around in society. I think I could dominate there, even though my knees and my hips are bad. But we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait.
I don't have an answer for that. Hey, some of those women are really good basketball players. I'm just saying. But that's true.
No,
you're
right.
Right now.
You're right. I'll be honest with you. I forget the WNBA exists every year until I hear
somebody makes a joke about it.
Oh, yeah, so I'm not even. But fundamentally, you're right. They are. But I always forget that it even exists, and I'm not even joking. All right, moving on to the next point. Large majorities of them have speaking of the elites. Now, large majorities of them have a favorable view of university professors, 89%, journalists, 79%, lawyers and union leaders, 78%, and even members of Congress, 67%. I mean, this is absolutely insane to me, but I do want to circle back to what you said, and I think you're probably right, and I'm a little hopeful that maybe these elites don't have the power that they think they have or thought they have. I mean, Jamie Dimon, CEO for JP Morgan, came out at Davos and was like, listen, we need to do more to listen to these, MAGA people, if you will. Kevin Roberts of the Heritage Foundation, the same in front of Davos, basically saying, listen, if the Western civilization wants to survive, they need to reject everything you guys are mentioning here. And the same with Milei of Argentina, Javier Milei, I believe, the new president of Argentina. So you're right. With these alternative news sources and platforms, people are getting out more information. And maybe you're absolutely right. With people like Kevin Roberts, Milei, and even Jamie Dimon coming out and saying something like that, maybe these people don't have the power that they once had, or maybe they never had it, and we just kind of perceived it that way.
I think that is more of what the objective truth there is that we. Now I'm going to start using that over and over. Sorry, I didn't. When I said it, I didn't mean to do a lead into your show. But it's one of those things when you look at what they've been saying very clearly what their goals are. They've been very clearly saying what their depopulation agenda. I mean, it sounds so. I would tell people it's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy. When they're openly telling you what they want, that they want you to eat bugs, that they want you to live in 15-minute cities, they're disconnected from reality. They're disconnected from what people really want. And I think that when you talk about the word elites, again, we're using this, $150,000 in New York City is not a lot of money. If you're making that annually. So to use this idea that what we're again talking about are people who perceive themselves as elites and they've set this metric when in reality is that I don't think they represent. Look, 61% favorability in Congress. The latest polling that I've seen shows that Congress's favorability is 6 to 8%. Overall from the general populace. That's from both sides. So if that's the case, who are this tiny subset of the country that actually likes Congress? I mean, did they only poll members of Congress?
Yeah, I mean, that's always fascinating. But then I go back to, even though most Americans, I think, would give Congress in general a low rating, when it comes to their own congressman or woman, they probably don't even know who they are. And or if they do, they would probably give them a higher rating. So I'm always kind of torn on those low polls when it comes to congressmen and women, because I'm like, they constantly get reelected. I mean, it's absolutely insane. But I want to touch on something that you just mentioned. We only have 1 minute left in this block, and then the next block we'll hit a lot of these other things pretty quickly here. But 15-minute cities. Explain to the viewing audience and listening audience what that is exactly, what that means.
So the idea is that they are going to set rationing and tell you that everything you will need is within 15 minutes of where you're at. But it's not just that's everything. That's all you're going to be allowed to do. So you essentially will be put where you work, and you will live within a 15-minute commute. You will be rationed an allotment of electricity, an allotment of fuel, and other such things. That's going to be the limitation, and this is what you're allowed to do. This is, I mean, it's essentially the ultimate socialism. The elites then get to lock us down into tiny little areas. But it's taken hold in Great Britain and in Europe, where they have started to institute these policies, and they're absolutely just Orwellian.
It's amazing to me that so many people fall for this stuff and absolutely don't want to be free. Guys, we got to take a quick break. I'll return on the other side. More with Jason Nelson of WholeCows.com. We'll be back. Okay, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show. I'm back with my guest, Jason Nelson, the CEO and founder of WholeCows.com. Go out and check out his website right now. If you enter the promo code STORM, STORM, you will get 15 to 20% off of your purchase, as well as free shipping. So let's real quick, Jason. We have 10 minutes in this block. Talk to us about your product real quickly here.
So I appreciate you mentioning it, Carl. It's when we started our company, one of the big things for us was understanding where the flaws were in the system. You needed to be able to understand why there's even a product needed. And after looking through everything that was available that we would call survival food or prepper food or anything that you might want that would be shelf stable, we realized that when it comes to animal protein, your selection was diced chicken or taco flavored beef crumble porridge or something. I'm not really sure. I can't find a crumble on a cow anywhere. And we just thought that why is it that nobody's going out and finding prime cattle from Texas and turning it into actual beef that you would want to consume, hand carved beef that you would actually eat in a recipe that you would use to sustain you, to thrive, not just survive. And we thought, gosh, it must be impossible to do. That's why nobody's doing it. And that's why when we started our company, it was only doing organic chicken. But we went ahead and made the dive after doing a lot of research and then having to set aside, to set up the supply chain for cattle. When we made that dive, we realized it wasn't that it was impossible to do. It's just really hard. And, I think a lot of people don't know how to work hard anymore. So we said, we can do this. We can put in the hard work and create a different type of product, something where, why do you want to eat a beef crumble when you can have tenderloin or New York strip or ribeye or, sirloin and tri-tip? I would rather have that than have beef crumbles.
Yeah, no doubt.
So that was the genesis of this.
And definitely cockroaches or worms like the elites want to, or crickets like the elites want to.
Right.
Want you
they want to
eat.
grow meat in a lab. And I like to tell people, I'm pretty sure that beef comes from a pasture, not a petri dish.
No.
That's just me. Maybe I'm
No
old-fashioned.
No
Right,
kidding.
yeah.
All right, so here's another point from Kimberly Strassel's column that I want to share with you. She wrote in it, and again, this was based upon a survey that Scott Rasmussen did for the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And the fifth point that she makes amongst the elites, the us versus them argument, is nearly 50% of elites, she writes, believes the U.S. provides, quote, too much individual freedom, close quote, compared with nearly 60% of voters who believe there is too much government control, quote unquote. Frankly, I'm disturbed by both of those numbers, but nearly 50% of elites believe the U.S. provides too much individual freedom. I wonder how those elites were able to become elites. That's your take on that.
Well, first of all, we know that most of those elites probably became elites through nepotism or through some sort of ism anyway, because that's just, again, that's the group we're talking about, right? Getting into a doctorate program nowadays, you're not going to do it. If you come from any conservative sect, if you're Asian, they're just not going to let you. So what's disturbing about the idea that people think we have too many individual freedoms is the perception that means that they believe that they can think for you, not just better than you, but for you. And that trickles down to everything, right? That trickles down to what you should be eating. It trickles down to what you should be doing with your free time, where you should be allowed to travel. And the scariest one to me is how you should be allowed to raise your children or the influence that they should have. So when you talk about individual freedom, they're being very clear here, 50%. That means that 50% of them believe that you shouldn't be allowed to exercise your right to go to a PTA meeting. Or that you shouldn't be allowed to dictate what curriculum your child is reading. So I don't understand that thought process. I think it's insane, but it does at least open our eyes to what they really want, which is complete control over our lives.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Jason. We only have 6 minutes left in the block here, but I totally skipped over it. You're right. 2/3 say they'd prefer a candidate who said teachers and educational professionals, not parents, should decide what children are taught. And that really fascinates me, given that, the left has increasingly become pro-abortion. I don't say that to be hyperbolic. I don't even think they're pro-choice anymore. It's not an argument of safe, legal, and rare, like Bill Clinton once framed it. It is straight up abortion all the way up until life. Watched a video earlier this week where a Wisconsin medical student was threatening to leave the state of Wisconsin and her school if she was not allowed to perform abortion with full-term babies. Just absolutely insane. And I'm just sitting here thinking, well, if you guys promoted, I don't know, marriage maybe, and people having babies, you wouldn't have to worry about brainwashing other people's children. I don't know. I'm just saying.
You know what's really funny to me is when you think back on the changes that Bill Clinton made in two major policies when he talked about them, when he talked openly about, but the introduction, and by the way, I have no problem at all. I don't care if somebody's gay at all. But when they did the "Don't Ask, Don't Tell" policy, it was a soft shift in moving the polls, if you will, when you talk about where people are on the spectrum, and they moved everybody. Said, well, we do make it "Don't Ask, Don't Tell," and what happened was it dragged everybody who was on the right over and reframed the argument. And you had people at the time who were saying, "What, are you going to have people marrying trees next?" Or I don't know, the things that sounded insane at the time. And now you go, "Oh my gosh, you have people who want to marry trees now." And it's very weird that you've just opened it up. And from a psychological operations perspective, is that you've been allowed to take the pro-life argument and turn it on its head to where we actually have people openly advocating for the termination of a 9-month-old baby inside of a woman's womb. I mean, that's insane. That right, partial birth abortion at the time of birth. And the fact that there's even any consideration given to not just giving that person a platform, but not immediately throwing them in an insane asylum, just tells you how far we've fallen.
Man, that is so good. Okay, so here's one that I really wanted to speak to you about. This one says here 77%. Again, I'm quoting from the article, the Them versus Us election from the Wall Street Journal. And so the point that I want to make now, 77% of elites support, quote, strict rationing of gas, meat, and electricity to fight climate change versus 28% of everyone else. Your thoughts on that?
Well, so who benefits from this? From a weaker society, right? So when you don't have your animal proteins, you become, I mean, we look at countries that are essentially malnourished, and you know what the end result is. So who benefits from this? Well, we use the climate change argument. What you're saying is that, hey, everyone in the world needs to take this seriously, except for China. So China now, their increases alone annually are dwarfing the carbon output of the Industrial Revolution. And they have no plans to cut any emissions till 2040. So the idea that we are so slowly strangling not only our economies, but we're actually weakening not just weakening society, but weakening the people. And that's what you're talking about when you talk about rationing food. I mean, we're a first world country, for goodness sake. And we're doing it, we're saying for the world, but we're not asking China to do it. Quite the opposite. So then you wonder, well, who's funding our universities and our think tanks that are pushing out this propaganda on climate change? Oh, China. Isn't that weird? I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory, right? Again, it's just a conspiracy. And so what you've had is another country infiltrate our bedrock institutions and push for massive social changes that have weakened the infrastructure of the country and weakened the very body of the citizen. And now we see China about to move on Taiwan. It becomes very clear to me that this is all just agenda-driven rather than actual solution-driven or problem-driven.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely. I think you're spot on here, because the next thing they say, more than 2/3 of elite Ivy graduates favor banning things like gasoline-powered cars, stoves, inessential air travel in the name of the environment. I don't suspect that these people are going to get rid of their gas range stoves. I don't suspect that they'll get rid of gasoline-powered vehicles. Maybe some of them will drive electric, but they'll continue to fly private jets and airliners, or so on, etc. It's just fascinating to me how much control Americans want over other Americans. It's almost as if this is a new religion for the left.
Well, it doesn't.
A minute left.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that anybody in any part doesn't want to control someone. That has always been the goal of humanity, right? Is to be the person in charge, be the person who controls the resources, be the person who gets to dictate by executive fiat what anyone else can enjoy, what anyone else can have. So that way, when you hand them out, the cake, they are so grateful for it. When you let them watch the Coliseum games, you are just so grateful for the gifts from your elites. We figured out how to eliminate dominate the elites, the strata that we have by giving free opportunity through capitalism in this country. That was the founding of our country, the republic that exists here. And right now we are failing not our forefathers, but we're failing our children and grandchildren, and failing to actually protect what we were given. And we're going to see the fruit of our own labors very soon.
Man, Jason Nelson of WholeCows.com. Man, it has been a great conversation with you today. I'm looking forward to having you back. I appreciate you joining us today. You guys in the listening and viewing audience, until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.